12 years I kept this place alive with my hands, broke every knuckle fixing what he left behind. Then he came home for the funeral, didn't even unpack, and by the third day, they handed him everything. The deed, the equipment, the name on the mailbox. I didn't argue. I just set down the keys, said, "Congrats, Jason," and left him with a letter I'd written 5 winters ago. He opened it after I walked out. And when he finished reading, he couldn't speak. It had rained the night before the funeral, not hard, just enough to soften the dirt around the barn and leave the porch smelling like wet tobacco and old wood. I was up by 5, feeding the chickens, trying to figure out what I was supposed to wear to bury a mother who hadn't spoken to me properly in 6 months. Dad sat at the kitchen table peeling an orange with his thumbnail, juice running down his wrist. "He's coming back," he said. Voice flat like it didn't mean anything, but it did. "Jason." Hadn't set foot here in 12 years. I didn't answer, just poured coffee into the tin mug we never bothered to replace, the one Mom always said should be thrown out because it leaked heat too fast and stained the counter. "He's staying in your room," Dad added, peeling the rest of the orange and leaving the rinds spread out like a broken wheel. I nodded, or maybe I didn't. I can't remember. The kitchen felt too tight, air heavy with old grief. Jason hadn't called once during the hospital stays, not when the crops failed, not when we lost Grandma's acreage in the flood 5 years ago. The service was short, led by some soft-spoken pastor Mom liked when she stopped going to St. Luke's, the one who wore sneakers under his robe and let her call him Pete. Jason sat beside me in one of Dad's old coats, still smelling like mothballs and ash. He hadn't grown into his hands, I noticed. Same long fingers, same twitchy knuckles. He didn't cry during the hymns, but he stared hard at the casket like he thought she might sit up and say his name. After they lowered her down, he touched the dirt, not with care, just curiosity. Back at the house, people brought casseroles we didn't ask for, all the usual ones. Creamed corn, that tuna noodle thing Donna makes, even someone's attempt at pulled pork that still smelled like lighter fluid. Jason hovered in the corner of the porch while the neighbors drank lemonade and talked about irrigation schedules. He didn't know anyone anymore. They didn't ask where he'd been, didn't mention the stories that made their way here about bar fights, DUIs, that stretch in Kansas that nobody called jail but everyone knew was. I saw him look at the fields like he couldn't remember them. Later that night, after everyone left and the crickets started up again, Dad called us into the front room, the one we used to only sit in for holidays. He was holding the deed in one hand and the keys to the combine in the other. Same hands that used to guide ours through math homework and tractor maintenance. "I'm retiring," he said, like we didn't already know, like the cane next to his chair wasn't enough of a hint. "Jason'll take it from here," he added, and I felt the shift before he said it, like thunder pressing down. "You're giving him the whole thing," I said quietly, eyes on the rug, tracing the patterns with my boot, the land, the equipment, everything. I looked at Jason, who looked down at his hands like maybe they were finally full. He didn't say anything. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe silence was his apology, or maybe it was just habit. Dad nodded once, final. Like it had been settled long before the funeral. "He's blood," he said, like I wasn't, like 12 years of lifting, mending, sweating, burying animals and bills alike meant nothing at all. I stood up, walked to the table where the folder sat with Mom's writing across the top, her loops sharp even in illness, and slid my envelope onto it. "Congrats, Jason," I said, offering the keys, cold in my palm. My voice didn't crack, my eyes didn't water. I don't know what my face looked like, but I hope it didn't betray me. Jason took the envelope slowly, careful like it might bite. Dad didn't look at me, just turned back toward the fire. "It's what your mother wanted," he said, like that erased the ache blooming in my chest. In the hallway, I heard the envelope tear open, just a whisper, like dry leaves in the wind. Jason didn't speak, didn't follow me out. I stepped into the dark yard, bare arms prickling with the cold. I didn't look back. Not even when I heard the chair scrape and Dad ask if he was all right. Silence answered him, and I smiled, not cruelly, just like someone who'd finally stopped hoping, because sometimes when a storm passes, you don't run for shelter. You just stand in the mud and let it happen, knowing the crops remember who stayed. If you've ever stood in a room where someone decided your worth in silence, please go ahead and like this video. It helps more than you know. And if you want to hear how the story unfolds, make sure you're subscribed. We've still got 4 chapters to go, and the truth doesn't land all at once. It settles, piece by piece. The next morning, I was out by the fence line fixing a post that had rotted halfway through. The cows had pushed it over again. Same spot they always went for. Jason walked up around 7, his shadow long across the grass. He had Mom's old Carhartt jacket on. The one I kept in the feed room since she passed. Can we talk? He asked, voice low like he didn't want to wake the corn. I nodded without turning, lifted the post, and shoved it deeper into the mud. The silence stretched, pulled, didn't snap. I didn't know she changed it, he said, hands buried in his pockets, watching the same cows that used to chase us as kids. The will, he added, like I needed clarification. I stayed quiet, tied off the wire and leaned into it, testing the pull. She did it after you came home last time, I finally said, glancing sideways. After you wrecked the Silverado and told her she was being dramatic. Jason looked away, eyes on the sunrise like it had answers. Dad never told me, he muttered, kicking at the dirt like it might forgive him. He burned it, I said, watching him freeze a little. The last one, her real one, the one that left it all to me. I didn't say it to hurt him. I said it because someone needed to speak the part of her that never got finished. Jason swallowed hard, jaw clenched, like he was chewing the weight of it. She wouldn't have, he said. She always told me this place would be mine. I nodded once, pulled off my gloves. She did, when you were 12, before she had to choose between the son she loved and the one who stayed. Jason didn't argue, maybe because it was true, maybe because we were standing on land that had watched us grow teeth, scrape knees, bury pets and promises both. The letter, he said slowly, pulling the folded paper from his back pocket, creased and smudged. Was all that real? I nodded again. Every name, every date, every call you didn't return. He ran a hand through his hair, turned away, then turned back. Why'd you give it to me then? He asked. Why not keep fighting? I picked up the hammer, tapped the post once more, steady, clean. Because I'm tired, I said, not angry, just hollow. Because you can have the land, but not the memory of it. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, quiet in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids hiding from storms in the hayloft. You really think they'd let me keep this place? He finally asked, nodding toward the road, the banks, the taxes, the equipment that barely holds together. I shrugged, started walking back toward the barn. That's not my problem anymore, I said, voice flat as gravel, but it will be. Later that evening, I found him sitting on the back porch with Dad's old ledgers open, fingers tracing numbers like they meant something to him. These books don't balance, he said without looking up. They haven't for years. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Yeah. Well, when corn sells low and diesel climbs high, you learn to make it work. Jason looked up, eyes clearer than I remembered. Did you borrow? I nodded, twice from Hallbrook, once from the co-op. He looked back down. You never told them. I shook my head, didn't think I had to. The wind picked up around 8, rustling the old cottonwood by the silo. Jason still hadn't moved. He'd flipped to Mom's handwriting on the last pages, her loop soft, tired, her notes always filled with hope we didn't inherit. She wrote about you, he said. Finger pressed to one entry, said you were the glue. I smiled without meaning to. She also said I was stubborn as sin and impossible to argue with. Jason laughed, short and small, the kind that hurt more than helped. She ever write about me? I walked inside, didn't answer, he already knew. At midnight, I heard his boots on the porch again, softer this time, like he didn't want to wake the ghosts. I was in the kitchen pouring the last of the coffee. I'm staying, he said, leaning against the doorway. I don't know if I deserve to, but I'm staying. I didn't look at him, just slid the mug his way. Then learn the land, I said, not the way Dad sees it, but the way Mom did, the way I had to. Jason nodded slowly, took the coffee, and for the first time in years, sat across from me. Like family. By the 3rd week, Jason started wearing the boots properly laced, the sleeves rolled back just enough to show the new calluses forming. He'd stopped asking where things were and started figuring them out. But the land didn't trust him yet. The south field stalled. Corn yellowed before the third sprout. He blamed the soil, then the rain, then the seed. I watched from the truck, arms folded, knowing it was none of those. You can't inherit rhythm, and that field. Where Mom planted snapdragons when Jason turned 16 and wrecked her Buick, remembered who had bent down and weeded it last. Holbrook came by mid-morning with a crate of early peaches, said his daughter was back in town and asked how long the boy planned on playing farmer. Jason laughed like it was a compliment. Didn't catch the way Holbrook watched him, eyes narrowed over the brim of his cup. He's settling in, I offered, more for politeness than truth. Holbrook raised a brow, handed me the crate. Just hope he learns faster than your father did. Jason didn't hear that part. He was already in the barn, trying to fix the spreader that hadn't worked right since 2018. That night, the generator cut out around 7. Just as the lights went on in the chicken coop, I was on the porch with the accounts, writing down numbers that didn't want to behave. Jason ran past me, flashlight loose in his grip, cursing softly. I let him go, waited for the flicker of light behind the shed, but instead I heard metal fall, hard, like something snapped. I rushed out barefoot, found him on his knees beside the propane tank, knuckles scraped, the wrench still spinning where he'd dropped it. I didn't know that line was cracked, he said quietly. It's been cracked since February, I replied, crouching beside him. I taped it up until we could afford the part. He looked at me then, face flushed, not from pain but shame. Why didn't you tell me? I shrugged, checking the connection. You were busy figuring out what gear went where. He nodded, stood up slow, wiped his palms on his jeans. I'm trying, he muttered. I stood too. Trying isn't the same as knowing when to ask. We didn't speak on the walk back. Just the sound of boots in dirt, the stars thick and close like they were listening. By morning, the coop smelled off, too quiet for a place that usually buzzed with feathers and noise. Jason was already inside when I got there, standing over the feed bin, pale. Did you leave this open? He asked, holding up a chewed corner of the sack. Rat prints tracked along the floor, leading straight to a half-dead hen, wings twitching, eyes wide. I didn't, I said, crouching beside it. The other hens clustered tight, feathers puffed, scared. Neither did I, Jason said. Voice distant, but someone did. I looked up at him, heart slowing just a beat too much. That afternoon, the seed rep called, said the last payment bounced, said they couldn't ship unless someone came down in person. I stared at the phone, then at the checkbook that didn't match the bank balance. Jason leaned in the doorway, dirt smudged across his cheek. I paid for the irrigation parts last week, he said, like it was an explanation. Thought I could cover it after harvest. I nodded, slow. You didn't run it by me, he sighed. It needed doing. I closed the ledger. So does the loan payment. He didn't argue, just walked out, slower than before. 2 days later, I found the combine stuck in the mud by the north slope, axle sunk, tire torn open by the same rock we marked off with spray paint 3 seasons ago. Jason stood beside it, cursing, shirt clinging to his back. Why didn't you avoid the flagged path? I asked, already knowing the answer. It wasn't flagged, he snapped, pointing, and I saw the paint had faded out, washed down to nothing by last month's rain. You said this was my farm, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Then start acting like it, I said. Too tired to shout. That night, he didn't come in for dinner. The porch light stayed on past 10. I watched from the kitchen window, saw him by the corn rows, shirt gone, hands in the dirt, digging for something I couldn't name. The kind of digging people do when they need to be told they're worth more than their mistakes. I didn't go out, didn't offer comfort. Just stood there, spoons still in the pot, watching my brother finally get swallowed by the very ground he thought would welcome him back. And somewhere in the stillness, the farm watched too, quiet, waiting. The letter came on a Thursday, tucked between the feed invoice and a sympathy card that must have been delayed. Jason opened it without thinking, standing by the sink, chewing on a cold biscuit. I saw his shoulders drop before I saw the letter itself. He slid it across the table like it might bite. Bank stationery, formal tone, foreclosure warning, due to unpaid balances and missed deadlines. He didn't look at me, just stared at the faucet dripping slow, like maybe that rhythm could anchor him. "I thought we had until next season," he said, barely louder than the clock tick. I picked it up, read it twice, every line knotted with dates I'd already circled on the calendar months ago. "You've missed more than one," I said quietly, sliding it back. He rubbed his eyes hard, like maybe it was a dream he could blink away. "I thought I was buying time," he muttered. Not losing it, I didn't answer, just reached for the ledger, opened it to the last page, the one I hadn't let him see yet, the one with my name on the final loan guarantee, signed when Dad went to the hospital that last time in April. "You co-signed," Jason said, reading it slowly, like each word stung. "After he said I was taking over, you still backed it." I nodded, poured 2 cups of coffee. Neither of us touched them. "The deal was if we got through harvest, I'd take my name off," I said. "You were supposed to keep it steady till then." Jason sank into the chair like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. "I didn't know it was this close," he whispered. I watched him, jaw clenched, eyes full of something heavier than regret. "You didn't ask," I replied softly. By sunset, we were standing by the silos, watching the last of the grain go in, air thick with dust, sky bleeding into gold. Jason leaned on the railing, arms streaked with sweat and guilt. "You ever think maybe they set me up to fail?" he asked, voice flat. "Mom wrote you in, Dad erased it, then left me holding something too big to carry." I didn't answer right away, just watched a crow hop across the field, wings twitching. "I think they thought love would be enough to teach you," I said finally. "But love doesn't patch holes in grain bins." He turned to me then, eyes red from wind or maybe shame. "I didn't want to screw it up, Lise," he said. "I really thought if I just worked hard, it'd sort itself out." I wanted to tell him that dirt doesn't reward intentions, it remembers patterns. That the land doesn't care about guilt, only consistency. But I didn't. I just sighed. "It's not about effort," I said. "It's about knowing where not to step." He looked down, toe nudging a crack in the concrete. "I stepped everywhere wrong," he said. Like it was both confession and plea. We sat on the tailgate later, boots off, watching headlights from Holbrook's truck disappear down the road. Jason held the old Polaroid from Dad's toolbox, the one of us covered in mud, 8 and 10, grinning wide after falling into the irrigation ditch. "Remember this?" he asked, thumb tracing the bent corner. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, Mom yelled like hell, then made us lemonade." He nodded, eyes far off. "I don't remember why I stopped calling," he said. "Just kept thinking I'd do something worth showing up for." I didn't reply, because that part wasn't mine to answer. That night, he packed a bag, didn't say much, just tossed in the same flannel he'd been wearing all week and the letter from the bank. I stood by the door, arms folded, heart tight. "You running or thinking?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Jason looked at me, hand on the knob. "Thinking," he said. For once, I didn't stop him, didn't ask where, just watched him go, porch creaking behind me, air thick with the weight of all we hadn't said. I didn't cry, didn't curse, just stood there till the taillights disappeared behind the orchard. When I walked back inside, the silence felt different, not heavy, just honest. I folded the ledger shut, stacked the dishes he'd left, stared at the empty chair where he used to eat like the world owed him a second chance. The coffee was still warm somehow, untouched. I sat with it, stared out the window, wondering if maybe this was what growing apart really looked like. Not yelling, not slamming doors, just someone realizing too late that inheritance means nothing when you never asked how it was built, and someone else finally setting the weight down without guilt. The first frost came early, curled around the last rows of cabbage like breath over glass. I was up before light, loading crates into the truck, hands aching the way they always do when the season shifts. Holbrook pulled in around 7, didn't step out, just waved for me to come over. He passed me a folded note through the window, worn and creased. Jason's handwriting on the front, said you'd know when to read it, he said, backing out before I could ask anything else. The truck's engine rumbled off, leaving the silence thick between my boots and the letter. I didn't open it right away, just tucked it in my back pocket, drove to market like it was any other Saturday, past the old diner with the flickering sign, waved to Miriam in the bakery stall like nothing had shifted under my ribs. People came for squash and sweet corn, asked about the harvest. Didn't notice the way my hands shook when I handed them change. By midday the sun had warmed the chill but not the ache. I found the note again while unloading, stared at the fold for a while before I finally sat down. Lise, it began. I didn't run, I just didn't want to make another mess on top of yours. The words ran tight, like he wrote them in a hurry or with hands that hadn't slept. I'm in Boise, working at a feed mill. It's loud and hot and honest, he said. I think I needed to remember what it felt like to be needed without being forgiven for free. He didn't ask for anything, didn't explain more than necessary. I know I lost the land, he wrote, but I don't want to lose the only person who told me the truth when it mattered. By the time I got home, the wind had picked up, tore a few of the porch flyers clean off the side rail. I clipped the last of the basil before it browned, made stew, the kind Mom used to simmer all day without measuring. I set 2 bowls out without thinking, then put one away. The house was still, but not empty. I read the letter again over dinner, slower this time, let the pauses between the sentences breathe. I didn't cry, just sat with it, let it sit with me. 2 people finally speaking, without yelling through closed doors. 3 weeks passed before I saw his boots again, standing on the porch like they had never left. His jeans were different, worn in different ways, face a little thinner, eyes a little steadier. I paid the first bill, he said before I asked, sent it from the job. I stepped aside, let him pass. He sat at the table, same chair as before, same silence. I brought the coffee, didn't ask if he wanted it. He took a sip, nodded. You look tired, he said. I smiled faintly. You look grown. He looked down at his hands, like he believed me. He didn't move back in, just came by more often, fixed the west fence without asking, brought over peaches from some farm outside Caldwell, helped me redravel the path to the barn. He didn't take over anything, just showed up and stayed until the work was done. Some days we talked, some days we didn't. It was enough. Dad never asked where he'd been, just handed him tools like nothing had passed between them, like time can smooth what words can't. I guess in some ways it can. The earth turns. The field grows back. People grow quieter when they're learning. That winter, I finally painted the trim white like Mom always wanted. Jason held the ladder while I worked, said I was bossy. I said he was slow. We laughed without tension, without pretending it wasn't earned. He pulled a box of old photos from the attic one afternoon. We sat on the floor sorting them, hands dusty, heart soft. She kept all of it, he said, holding a school drawing we both forgot making. Even the dumb stuff. I nodded. Maybe the dumb stuff is what keeps it real, he smiled. Then we're the most real family there is. Spring came slow that year, wet and steady, good for the soil, hard on the knees. Jason stayed through planting, didn't ask about inheritance, didn't mention the bank, just worked beside me like the job itself was the answer. Maybe it was. Maybe some people don't need land to belong, just a reason to stay. I never said the words out loud, never needed to. The farm had a way of knowing when someone meant it this time, and when Jason walked the fence at dusk, hands in his pockets, eyes on the horizon, I finally stopped holding my breath.